At 2:30, we got number 3 Alabama traveling to Auburn. Alabama favored by 19.5 points on CBS. Bryce Young last week carried them to a victory, 31 of 40, threw for 559 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 picks. Brian Robinson also on the ground had 27 carries for 122 yards, and Jamison Williams had 8 catches for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. Auburn, on the other hand, kind of had a down week, kind of got a little bit owned by I want to say Texas A&M, but I'm not positive. TJ Finley went 17 of 32, threw for 188 yards and a touchdown. Tanks Bigsby had 22 carries for 164 yards. Actually, sorry, last week I believe was the Mississippi State game where they blew a 28-point lead. I believe that's what happened last week for Auburn. I'm not positive. And Shedrick Johnson had 7 catches for 111 yards. Alabama leads the series 47-37 all time. Last game did go to Bama, and they have won 7 out of the last 10. What's interesting here, though, for Alabama is the past, really, I count as the past 2 games, but I guess 2 out of the past 3 games, they have not looked phenomenal. Again, they only beat LSU by 6 points, and I believe they only beat Arkansas by 7. So it's not like this team is dominating week in, week out like we're used to seeing Alabama do. That's why Alabama's 3, by the way. If you wanted to know, they're not 2 because Ohio State went out and dominated last week against Michigan State. It's also a combination of who you beat and how you beat them. And right now, Alabama, sure, Arkansas is a tough football team, but you did not beat them very convincingly either. Auburn, on the other hand, obviously blew a huge lead they had against Mississippi State. But blowing a huge lead shows you can actually get a huge lead. This is a good Auburn football team with Brian Harsin. And sure, they have to iron out a few kinks for next year if they really want to be playoff contenders. But they look pretty solid as a football team. And I'd be kind of interested to see who Auburn gets to play in a bowl game this year, depending on who they win here. Obviously, if they lose here, they're 6-6. And that is just what you need to be bowl eligible, and you're obviously not going to get a great bowl with that if you're Auburn. I'm interested to see here because obviously a loss here for Alabama just ends their playoff chances almost automatically. Obviously, there is a scenario where 2 lost teams do get to go in, but it's not likely, to say the very least, that happens. 2-loss team has never made the playoffs before, not to mention with teams like Ohio State looking so good, and teams like Oklahoma State looking super good, and teams like... Sorry, yawned. Teams like Georgia looking dominant. I just don't... And Cincy looks really good at this point in the season. I don't know if you make it with 2 losses for Alabama. This makes it a must-win football game. I just think you got to beat Auburn. I think Auburn keeps it closer than 19.5 point spread. It'll be the 2 out of the last 3 weeks they covered. I really don't count New Mexico State as a game because, again, it's New Mexico State. They're just absolutely god-awful. So give me Alabama to win, but Auburn to cover that 19.5 point spread.